All right, it is Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. This news that I've got is from CBS News. Eleanor Watson was the reporter. Pentagon rejects second request from D.C. mayor for National Guard help with migrants bust from Texas and Arizona. First thought was, say what? But here we go as to why that is. Let me go and readjust this. Sorry about that. Here we go as to why that is. The Pentagon sent a letter to D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser saying the D.C. Guard is not trained or equipped to care for the migrants, and the D.C. Armory is not air-conditioned, making it unsuitable for to accommodate anyone overnight. Okay, again, not trained or equipped. Say what? Armory. The D.C. Armory is not air-conditioned. It's not. So we can't have anybody overnight. That doesn't make any sense. It's dumb. You know. What the hell are they talking about? If memory serves, the armory is a place where ammunition and weaponry is. You know, and you really can't. You can only fit like shelves and crates of that stuff. Why in the world would you want to put hundreds of migrants, 1,000 migrants in a room of ammunition and weaponry? The DC Armory is not air conditioned. You know, so if they're saying it's a warehouse, well, you can install air conditioning into it. But they're making it seem like it's this big place for everybody to where 1,000 people can live in. You know, what I'm picturing is sort of a storage facility, sure, maybe even the size of a warehouse, but most definitely not an armory. That is just dumb. Continuing, the DC National Guard has no specific experience in or training for this kind of mission or unique skills for providing facility management, feeding, sanitation, or ground support. I think that was the last of the letter. No, there wasn't. No, I'm sorry. But it's like, seriously, you've got no training or anything like that for support. What the hell purpose do you serve then? And I'll get to the meaning of that later. Let me just keep going. In the first request, the Pentagon claimed it would be negative. It would have a negative impact to troop readiness. It would negatively impact, and then noted the NGOs, I think it's National Guard officers, receiving supporting migrants arriving into the capital world have received sufficient funds through FEMA grants. Okay, the migrants have already got checks from FEMA. The agencies have already got checks from FEMA. They don't need our support. That's what they're saying. Okay, troop readiness is what they're there for. Just FYI, negatively impact troop readiness. It's irrelevant if it's a negative or positive. Troop readiness is what the National Guard is there for. You know, they're supposed to be ready, and to think that it would negatively impact the readiness is just downright stupid. In her second request, Bowser specified the Guard would help for 90 days, but the Pentagon said this amount of time would still impact the readiness of the troops and their families, adding the detail that approving such a request would force DC Guard to cancel or disrupt training exercises through the fall. Did you get that? They can't do a humanitarian crisis like the way they normally do because it would disrupt training in the fall. What a bunch of BS. The DoD, Department of Defense, acknowledged aware of concerns associated with uninformed military personnel in direct contact with migrants in a domestic operation. Again, about the readiness, you know, claiming that the DoD the DOD is saying that they're incompetent because they wouldn't be ready. In contrast to, and here's an explanation, in contrast to the civilian-led approaches to migration reception, use of the DCNG personnel would be inappropriate to the task regardless of the duration or number of personnel involved. Did you get that? Any civilian can handle this just fine, but the DC Guard would be messed up. They wouldn't know what to do. In response to the Department of Defense, Bowser says, Bowser states that the city will continue working with federal partners and the local NGOs on the best way to set up systems that allow us to manage an ongoing humanitarian crisis. Adding, she will continue fighting for DC statehood so that in the future, when the DC mayor says that we need the support of the DC Guard, she has the ability to deploy the Guard. I say do it. I say do it because so far the Guard, whoever's in charge of it, is saying they're not equipped. They have no training. The DOD is saying the Guard doesn't have the capability. And it's all the way up to the Pentagon that's saying it would be inappropriate. Do you get that? The National Guard that has done rescue efforts as far back as I can remember with Katrina, Hurricane Katrina, all the wildfires, California, Texas, Arizona, all those wildfires. The National Guard can do firefighters' jobs, yeah. The National Guard, which has been helping here in Texas, the Texas National Guard, which has been assisting the state troopers and DPS with apprehending migrants, or at least processing and collecting data on those that surrendered. You know, they can do that, but they can't come over. They can't go over to DC and New York City, set up facilities like the way they did here in Texas, and have the agencies that deal with migrants collect them and keep them there, and they can't hold the area, they can't secure the area, they can't do anything. Okay? Which doesn't make any sense. Because every time I've complained about Governor Greg Abbott, sorry, it's 6:30 in the morning and it's already 82 degrees outside. I'm sorry. I'm going to be drinking a lot of water. Sorry. Our worthless Governor Greg Abbott, you know, had the National Guard doing all that stuff. And when he wasn't bothering them, when he wasn't making them into data collection clerks, you know, the Guard was guarding the facilities, the troops and state troopers and the law enforcement, all the way down to local law enforcement, were apprehending the traffickers, the smugglers, the attempted kidnappers, the psycho haters, the douchebag loan attackers, anybody that was posing as a threat, wanting to bomb or shoot up a holding facility full of migrants. Law enforcement was capturing all these assholes, while the Guard was doing, well, being on guard at the holding facilities. And that's when my worthless Governor Greg Abbott wasn't having them being data collection clerks. As long as they're there, they can take down names and numbers of people per family and fingerprints and all this other crap, you know, for background checks and all this stuff. That's what my worthless Governor Greg Abbott did with the Texas National Guard. DC Guard has an opportunity to do the exact opposite, to do the right thing, to hold the facilities and let law enforcement capture and prevent kidnappings and traffickings, while at the same time the Guard could be there to prevent terroristic attacks ranging from somebody that wants to shame and make the guard look bad, all the way up to the downright lone wolf attacker, sniper, shooter that wants to mass shoot migrants because they're the devil. Because the migrants are the devil. Okay. The guard is there to stop douchebags like that. All that training will be put to good use, at least at this domesticated level, from terrorists all the way down to traffickers, no differently than what the law enforcement has to deal with. That's what the guard is there for. That's the training that they do. It's not just building a hut. It's not them doing carpentry. If anybody ever seen what those metal tents, those big giant tent facilities are, they're made of metal. That has to be done very carefully with construction, something that a military-based engineer can handle perfectly. You know, those holding facilities are not just, you know, makeshift tents. They're not pop-up tents, people. And guard posts and razor wire and fences and all that good stuff needs to be in place. The military knows how to do that. The National Guard should be able to do that in their sleep. Plus, leading on to the final article, which has me really, you know, the mayors of DC and New York, they want to rewrite the system to where fighting for DC statehood. So in the future, when the mayors ask DC to step up, the DC Guard will step up. I think they should do it. I think they should go for it. They should acquire that statehoodship. But on to the final paragraph. A DHS spokesperson stated that the Biden administration has been in touch with both the DC and New York City mayors and FEMA regional administrators and have been meeting on site to coordinate available support to help receive and shelter the migrants arriving in the cities. And I say thank you, because technically that was the first question that came to mind after reading the most moronic first paragraph, that they're not trained or equipped to handle the migrant situation. I thought that was the most idiotic statement. And at the same time, I thought, well, what about Alejandro Mayorkas, who's in charge of DHS and the immigration agencies when it comes to securing and holding facilities for the migrants? You know, what happened to them? Well, here at the very end of the article, it turns out DHS and Biden are going to get together with the mayors and coordinate available support to help and receive and shelter the migrants. Okay, which I think it's great, and I think it sucks that the DC National Guard, who had no problem gassing people for a presidential photo op, they were peaceful protesters, and they were gassed and kicked off the grounds for President Trump to take a photo op in front of a church or something like that, holding the Bible upside down and stuff, and all this other crap. You know, the National Guard was used for that, and they had no problem doing something like that, but they got this huge problem with doing their jobs with this humanitarian rescue effort. And yes, I'm saying rescue because those lives that are migrants, they're still in danger. They're still in danger of being picked up, trafficked, kidnapped, disappearing off of the face of the earth, you know, and subject to hate crimes, if not domestic terroristic attacks. The National Guard setting up the foundations of the facilities is a big help. That's what they're there for. They were there for Katrina. They were there for everybody that suffered through the wildfires. Here in Texas, Monday, I took a pilot from San Antonio to Dallas Fort Worth International because he couldn't get the channels, the correct flight channels to go from here to there to get there in time. So he decided to call an Uber, and that's where I came in, and I transported him all the way to Dallas International Airport right when that storm was coming in. There was a storm that was coming in, and I was making my way out to get back here to San Antonio. Before I could even leave the city limits of Dallas, there was already high levels of water that thankfully my SUV could handle, and I was hydroplaning a lot of times, all the way as far south as Temple, Texas, which is just a couple of cities south of Dallas, and about a good county away from Austin. So, I mean, I lucked out by getting out of there, and it turns out I did the good thing in doing to get out there, because the storm hit Dallas, flooded the area, and although the news reports were showing firefighters there, the National Guard, should they have been called upon, would be there also. If not, they already did. I don't know. I haven't gone through all of the investigative journalistic reports, because I only saw one report before I was road fatigued, and I went to go get some sleep. But if I look into it, I'm almost positive the Texas National Guard did something to help out everybody that was flooded up there in Dallas, especially because of one little article that I skimmed through, but I was just too tired to actually read. I had to get some sleep. My worthless governor, Greg Abbott, already declared a national disaster. He made a disaster declaration, claiming that Dallas is a disaster, natural disaster. There's flooding, there's people, there's destruction, there's mass destruction and all this crap. Apocalyptic levels of flooding. So declare of natural disaster had to be taken, and all our tax-paying dollars is going to the expense of pulling out these cars that got flooded in and all this good stuff. But the Guard is what you use for that stuff, as well as the fire department and all the EMS and law enforcement. The National Guard, the Texas National Guard, was for that. The National Guard was for Katrina. The National Guard was for all the wildfires in California. The National Guard is for every place that's flooding. The National Guard was there for the Kentucky floods. The National Guard was there for migrants. Here in the Texas, over there in Arizona. Now here in Texas and Arizona, they were abused. They were caged. They were mistreated. In D.C., they have the chance. The National Guard, an American National Guard, has a perfect opportunity to redeem themselves from this ugly image that the National Guard has put themselves concerning migrants here in the South, up there in the North. They got a chance to actually redeem themselves. DHS spokesperson says that they're getting involved with the Biden administration to coordinate available support. Now, DHS and Alejandro Mayorkas and Immigration and Customs and Border Patrol agencies, they did their part down here in Texas with organizations like SOS1, Australia Southwest Key Australia, and National Coalition of Churches. Okay, now those that are right off the top of my head and other agencies got into trouble every now and then, and it ranged from abuses like over in Arizona, where surveillance footage was recording keepers manhandling the migrant children. One of them was like slammed up against the wall. Others were kicked and all this good stuff in order to transport them from one area to, I think, to the bathrooms, from their cage to the bathroom, and vice versa. They were beaten and they were manhandled. Okay, in both Arizona and Texas combined, there were a couple of reports of mistreatments, abuses, manhandlings, minor trespasses all the way up to actual trespass like rape, including rape of a child, rape of children. A total of 4,500 cases, 4,500 plus cases of all of those abuses. Okay. Now that DHS here, and that's from 2008 to 2018, within a 10-year time span from Obama's to Trump's administration. Okay. Now, here we are in 2022. DHS and Biden are in charge now. They're getting together to coordinate available support with the mayors. Okay. These are officials. This isn't just voluntary organizations with a couple of punks. Like, and bear in mind, throughout that 10-year time span, it was a couple of punks amongst, a dozen or two, hundreds in total, hundreds of volunteers to handle up to tens of thousands to 100,000 migrants from different parts of South America. There's a small handful of people that were committing these problems throughout the course of time, amongst dozens, amongst hundreds of volunteers. Okay, here we are in 2022. DHS, Biden, the mayors, they're all getting together to help out with, and FEMA, they're all getting together to help out all over again. There's no doubt in my mind that Southwest Key Estrella, SOS1, National Coalition of Churches, they're going to be called again because they're the ones that are doing these facilities, maintenance and supervisions. They're going to be calling them again, and no doubt those organizations are going to want to redeem themselves. They're going to want to do it the right way again, and make it sure, especially now that they've gone through these problems of violations and traffic deals and stuff like that. There were a couple of volunteers that were confronted by migrant nationals or whatever, people that were saying, hey, I need those kids. Hey, I need that family. I need those workers, those people that are workers and stuff, because I'm supposed to be paid for having them here in the States. Once they paid them to get across, they pay me to get them to their destinations. I need to get paid. This was a trafficker on a couple of times, on a couple occasions between 2008 and 2018. Okay? These were traffickers demanding to get that because they were supposed to be paid for their efforts. Okay? One actually caved in. Oh, you're supposed to receive them? Oh, okay. And actually gave a guy two migrants before law enforcement caught them and stepped up and said, how the hell did you two get out of your holding facilities? And they said, well, we were turned over to this guy who said he needed to get paid. So that kind of foul up, that kind of goof up needs to seriously be made up for. Okay? And I forget which organization it was. I keep forgetting which one it was that did that. I think it was Southwest Key Estrella, or it could be SOS1. I can't remember. But now that they're going to be going to DC and New York, they got a chance to redeem themselves and do it right. Okay? But here's the problem. DC National Guard isn't participating. Because again, they said they're not equipped to. And according and the people above them in the Department of Defense said, well, you've got all those FEMA grants. You don't need the National Guard. And then the people above the Department of Defense and the Pentagon are saying it would be inappropriate. We can't have you have them. It would be inappropriate for them to do their jobs, for the National Guard to do what they do best: rescue, prevent terrorism, prevent crime, stay on guard for the sake of America. No matter what level, whether it be at a national terroristic level or a natural disaster crisis, the Guard is always there. So this babbling bullcrap, which leads to my final comment concerning the article, What do we need them for? They should be dismantled. What do we need them for? The DC National Guard is making it very clear that America doesn't need the DC National Guard. Hell, Texas National Guard was nothing but Greg Abbott's lapdogs. Sick 'em, get 'em, sick 'em. They were nothing but little bitches to my worthless governor, but even they were put to use. DC National Guard is just crossing their arms and going, nope. They're making up excuse after excuse not to get involved at all. They have the perfect opportunity to make the National Guard look the way we need to see our National Guard. Okay? Rescuers in the humanitarian effort. Builders of these facilities. Guardians of the facilities to prevent traffickers, to prevent kidnappers, to prevent hate groups, to prevent mostly in the form of protests, but nevertheless hate groups nonetheless that could attack, all the way up to haters that will attack, all the way up to lone wolf gunman attacks, all the way up to a terroristic bomb in the name of whatever religion, in the name of whatever nationality. The Guard is there to face those problems no differently than they are to face the humanitarian rescue efforts. And they would be rescuing them. They would be rescued just by building the facilities and holding them down for 90 days. Because it would prevent, it would make everybody aware all the way down to the local law enforcement as to what to expect and all this good stuff. And the people that are trying to attack and kidnap and all that would know that throughout that 90-day period, the National Guard set up this perimeter, a secured perimeter that would require extra effort from the kidnappers and traffickers and attackers, which would be a huge heads up and warning signs for everybody from the National Guard all the way down to local law enforcement to stop and prevent and apprehend those that are about to do something terroristic, if not just simply criminal. That's what they're there for. And if they're not going to do that, then honestly, what purpose do they serve? What purpose is our tax-paying dollars going to them for? They don't have the training. They're not equipped. It would interfere with their training. It would involve personnel. And you got those FEMA grants. Go ahead and do it yourself. That's the BS excuses. What purpose do we need the DC National Guard for? What purpose do they serve? Why are they there? Why are they there? And who's in charge of them? Who's in charge of the National Guard making up this bullcrap excuse? So that way we know who to request for the administration to fire. Who's in charge? Who's been appointed of the Department of Defense? Who's appointed to the Department of Defense? Saying no, they can't do it. They can't do it. It wouldn't be right because it would involve personnel and it would interfere with everything. You know, it's a domestic operation, direct contact. Military personnel would have direct contact with them. No, they can't do it. That's a concern. Who's saying this crap? So that way the government could fire this guy. That guy needs to be fired for this kind of babbling bull crap. And the Pentagon. Who all was involved in the Pentagon? Because that can't just be one person. That's got to be a multiple of people that made this declaration that they're not trained and equipped and that the armory is not air conditioned. The DC Armory, there's no air conditioning in there. So we can't help. I would like to know who's in charge of who in the Pentagon was in charge. Because this couldn't have been just one man to have that kind of authorization. That had to have been done in a meeting, and it had to have been done involving more than one person. And every single one of those people in the Pentagon should be fired. The DC Guard, and let's say they're right. Let's say that they're not equipped, and all they have for a containing facility is the DC Armory, the non-air conditioned DC Armory. Let's say that's true. Let's say that's true. Let's say that the National Guard, DC National Guard, isn't trained for this kind of mission or have unique skills to providing facility management, feeding, sanitation, or ground support. Okay? Well, that just goes back to what purpose do they serve? What purpose do they serve? Why isn't the DC National Guard dismantled then? All these budget cuts that politicians do, and you seriously can't cut the DC National Guard. Why not? They're not equipped for anything. They don't have any unique skills. And it'll interfere with their training, whatever problem, which is nothing but a prelude to another Uvalde shooting. Okay? For those of you that never got the specifics, at least the ugly flip side reality of what happened there. Here it is. A gunman went into Robb Elementary School, started killing kids. Local law enforcement with armor and machine guns went up there. One got shot in his direction where debris hit his head, and that started a chain reaction of chickening out and calling for backup and surrounding the perimeter and moving vehicles into proper positions and removing vehicles that were not in proper positions, and guys running with machine guns and body armor and camo wear from one end to the other side of the building to talk to somebody, and then go running back with looking like troopers in action with machine guns and the body armor all the way back to the other side of the building where they were at in the beginning. And there was people that were walking and talking on radios, and there was a bunch of guys looking official with clipboards and policy books, terrorist handling policy books, and hostage negotiation books, and all this other stuff, and body cams. And then these guys with machine guns are running to the other side of the building again to talk to somebody, and then run back to the original side of the building that they came from, looking really tough, looking really cool, and all this good shit. All the while that the gunman was in that classroom killing children. At his discretion, at his leisure. And it's that kind of bullcrap that's going to go on in DC. Why? Because DC is already full of excuses. DC has already told you when it comes to non-threatening migrant facility holding tasks, they're not trained. They're not equipped. They don't know what's going on. And they think it would be inappropriate. That's what's going to happen in DC and New York area. That's what's going on. The heroes are going to be the civilians that toughed it out. While the DC Guard, the New York National Guard, I don't know if they actually have a National Guard, but whatever. Whatever guard. As far as I can tell, it's just DC National Guard. The DC Guard is not going to be worth a damn. No differently than the law enforcement with all that riot gear and all their training and all their shooting and all their martial arts practices and all their combative practices and exercises. They were completely worthless. And that's what's going to happen in DC. And I hate to be a doomsday prophecy. I'm not. It's a prediction, but it's a prediction that I can actually bet money on. I'll bet money on it. The DC Guard is completely worthless. And all that's going to happen over in there where the facilities are is trafficked people disappearing, some of them disappearing off the face of the earth, haters, hate protesters, lone wolf gunmen, and hate group attackers, hate mob attackers. And the DC area is going to do nothing but tear gas peaceful protesters that want some kind of justice done. That's all that the DC is going to do. DC National Guard. That's all they're going to do. They're going to run around with machine guns. They're going to march in unison along with the next John Rittenhouse, some 17-year-old that's going to kill some protester that's demanding justice, that's demanding that DC National Guard do something to help out, to ease the pains. And the next Kyle Rittenhouse is going to be, if not the actual Kyle Rittenhouse, is going to be in DC marching alongside the National Guard, getting ready to pick a fight with somebody to shoot them in the name of self-defense, while the migrants are going to be victimized, and all of this is going to be done on our tax-paying dollars' expense. That's all that's going to happen. What purpose does the DC National Guard serve? They're not trained. They're not equipped. They're full of excuses. No differently than the douchebags over in West Texas, where Uvalde is, that didn't do a damn thing when handling one lone gunman. One. In an elementary school. All that running around and looking tough and looking like combat ready and all this other crap, and moving from back and forth with a machine gun in hand, ready to kill and ready to shoot and ready to fight and ready to patriotically, defend America and all that stuff. That's all you're going to see in DC. That's all you're going to see. Correction. That's all you're going to see out of the DC National Guard. Law enforcement, however, local law enforcement will more than likely be doing their jobs. Civilians and volunteers will be doing their jobs. They'll be toughing it out. They'll be taking bullets for children that they'll be covering. And they'll be having to deal with the next Kyle Rittenhouse, if not the actual Rittenhouse, who's going to go over there in the name of America to pick a fight and kill that person in the name of defense once he's triggered their anger. That's all that's going to happen. That's all that's going to happen. So why not try to find a way to remove DC National Guard? Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Get rid of the supervisor that's in charge of them, that's coming up with this BS excuses. Get rid of everybody on the Department of Defense that's claiming, sorry for the burps, I just ate. That's claiming that, well, they got FEMA grants anyway, so they didn't do it themselves. Get rid of that guy. It's obviously he wasn't elected in. Otherwise, he'd be out there with the rest of the politicians, not making any kind of declarations, but just saying, well, let's work things out and let's see what we can do. And well, what is Biden doing? What's the president doing? That's all that if he was an elected official, he would be doing that kind of garbage. Well, where's Obama? He would have been saying that. What about Hillary? It was always Hillary. But, Department of Defense, whoever's in charge of it, needs to be fired. Plain and simple. He needs to be let go. And every person involved in the Pentagon that came up with this crap, that it would be inappropriate for DOD or National Guard officials to get involved. It would be inappropriate. They need to be fired. They need to be removed. They're obviously not elected officials. Otherwise, they would be saying, well, what's Biden doing about it? They need to be fired. Hey, man, what the fuck? See this guy with the headlights in the back? That's just BS. Go away, dude. Everybody that is currently making up all this BS excuses, they're getting paid salary, they're getting paid big paychecks annually. They have no reason to disregard any kind of crisis, humanitarian natural disaster, wildlife natural disaster, some kind of riot, protest. And so far, the only thing that DC has been done with the peaceful protesters was gas them instead of doing the right thing and keeping things orderly. They're going to have peaceful protests, fine, but there's not going to be any Antifa pulling up in a car, lighting up a bomb, and expecting the peaceful protesters themselves from handling the situation like the way they've done before. It wasn't the National Guard that stopped that Antifa guy from lighting up a bomb in the middle of the peaceful protest. It was the peaceful protesters that risked it. They jumped the guy, they beat him up, another one grabbed that bomb and threw it in the Antifa guy's car. And it exploded and set his own car on fire. That was cool, by the way. But what's sad is that it wasn't the National Guard that did it. It was a regular guy. What purpose does the DC National Guard serve? What purpose does the National Guard serve? Here in Texas, it would be a surprise that they didn't do anything unless they were pulled off by our worthless Governor Greg Abbott to go to those holding facilities and be data clerks. What's your name? What part of Mexico do you come from? Blah, 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 blah. Data clerks. Now, if they weren't there being data clerks, if they weren't there collecting data and information, and they were doing their job, they would be up there with law enforcement and local law enforcement who are actually apprehending trespassers, traffickers, human traffickers, smugglers, a whole mess of criminals, including hate criminals. People that think that they're American so they can do what the law says, and they can interfere with somebody and pull them over at the street and point a gun at them and say, where's your green card? To actual Americans, law enforcement stops those douchebags also. The National Guard would prevent them from going into the holding facilities. The National Guard would be apprehending the douchebags that said, hey, I still need to get paid. That's what they would be doing if they weren't being these worthless douchebags. At least here in Texas, they had an excuse. Greg Abbott said to be clerks. Greg Abbott said to be gas jockeys to check tire gauges at the border of these trucks that are going across the border without checking the cargo. They were just following Texas Governor Greg Abbott's orders. What's the excuse over here in D.C.? The Department of Defense said no. The people in the Pentagon said it would be inappropriate. That's their excuse. Oh my God. So what is the DC National Guard doing then? Nothing. Just waiting for another peaceful waiting for protesters and voluntary people to approach the holding facilities for the migrants so they can tear gas them. That's as best as I can tell. They're waiting to patrol the area and letting the next Kyle Rittenhouse, if not the actual Kyle Rittenhouse, pick a fight and shoot somebody in the name of defense. That's what the DC guys are doing right now, because there's nobody telling him to do clerk data processing shit. They're asking him to help with the organizing a system into organizedly handling the migrants that are coming by bus. That's what they're being asked to do. They're asking them to coordinate with everybody there and work with them as they handle this humanitarian crisis. That's what they're being asked to do. They're not being asked to be data clerks. They're not asking them to play sick'em dogs to defenseless children that come without any kind of parental supervision, to cage little children. And if that's what the DC National Guard is waiting for, permission to cage people, permission to cage unaccompanied minors, then again, what purpose do they serve? They got the perfect chance to do this the right way, to make it a non-bullcrap, shitty circus that was done here in Texas. They got the perfect opportunity and they're blowing it. They're dropping the ball, and they're just downright refusing. And that's what's messed up. They're not being the patriotic heroes that America needs them to be. That's what we need to see. Not any of this babbling bullcrap that they're claiming to put them in a holding facility with no air conditioning. You know, and I'm glad that that's what they're saying that they don't want to do. That's a little reassuring. They shouldn't want to. They shouldn't want to put them in a holding facility with no AC. You know, they shouldn't want to. What the hell kind of crap is that? So, yeah, I mean, it's just messed up. The DC National Guard is just plain worthless. You know, and it's just BS. It's about time that the DHS, Biden administration, FEMA administration, and the mayors of both New York City and DC are going to be getting together to try to handle this stuff themselves, no differently than the way DOD is saying, you know, well, you got FEMA grants, why don't you do it? Why don't you take care of it yourself and all this crap? That's not the point. The fact of the matter is that there's a high level of security risks that come with doing this, and the National Guard would be a very big help. You know, you got a lot of crime going on in those cities. So you know local law enforcement can only do so much. You got a lot of crime going on with intersections in port harbors and all that. So you know the Coast Guard and the state troopers can only do so much. You got a level of terroristic threats that are equivalent to terroristic threats, not actual, Hezbollah or Taliban styled threats. No. But there are haters that disapprove of helping migrants. There are hate groups that would be looking forward to doing something, committing a hate act, committing a hate crime. And there are douchebags, lone wolf douchebags to society that won't mind taking a few shots themselves. Something that the National Guard can handle. Or at least they're supposed to be. Again, I don't got faith. I honestly believe they're going to do nothing but run around with machine guns looking like badasses from one side of the building to the other side of the building to communicate with another guy in the parking lot, and to run with their like troopers, hut with their with like SWAT in their camo gear and their body armor, and run around to the other side of the building all over again. I got a funny feeling that that's all that they're going to do. I don't have faith in them, So I honestly, which again is honestly why I believe, what purpose do they serve? Why aren't these people disbanded? Why isn't that organization, the DC National Guard, removed? Because they so far that I could tell, I didn't even know DC had a National Guard. I've always known Texas has a National Guard, but I never knew DC had one. And now that the day that I find out that there is one, I'm looking at nothing but a bunch of bullshit excuses with people posing as patriots that you know full well, people that are full of excuses and act like patriots are completely worthless around the time that they're needed. So, yeah, disband them and fire every single one of these douchebags that are coming up with excuses why they shouldn't participate in this humanitarian crisis. Once again, we're all up to it, doing it ourselves. The volunteers, up to the mayors, up to the agencies that are appointed by the government, and that is authorized with the presidential administration, that's doing all the work, while everybody else is coming up with a bunch of excuses. The so-called patriots, the so-called real Americans, the so-called sovereign sons are all BS excuses and mindless attacks on the defenseless. That's it. That's what's going on right here in America. That's what's going on right now. Once again, it's up to the rest of us to handle our business while trying to find a reason, a way to get those in charge who are not doing the damn thing fired, removed, non-elected, etc., etc. All right. Well, I'm up to 50 minutes. I'm surprised I'm even going that I'm capable of going that far. So I'm going to close it. I'm going to close it down. I'm going to just, I just had to fill you in on what's going on with this and share my comments, which, again, this is Chris's comments on common sense, on common ground. Honestly, what I'm saying is, obviously, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong in saying this. The DC Guard is worthless. It's even more worthless than the Texas Guard that was at least put to use, even if through the wrong reasons and wrong methods when following Governor Greg Abbott's orders. The DC is just worth. Everybody has a chance to make up for the past mistakes that was done here in Texas and over in Arizona, all the way out to California and certain parts here in the southeastern states. Everybody has a way to redeem themselves and do it right. Especially the National Guard, who is an important factor in handling crises and handling any kind of efforts that needs them. The DC National Guard is just plain worthless, as are the people who are commanding them, are the people who are just making excuses for them not to do a damn thing at our tax-paying expense. God bless Biden. God bless GHS, Department of Homeland Security. God bless the Health and Services. God bless Mayorkas. God bless every single organization, volunteer that is throwing themselves out there, especially after the embarrassments of the previous scandals that went on from as far back as 2008 to as far as 2018, 10 years later. Again, it's just a few punks that amongst hundreds of workers handling tens of thousands up to 100,000 migrants that were committing these little crimes. They were committing these crimes within a 10-year time span. 4,500 and change cases. Some of them were sexual assaults. Some were sexual assaults on minors. Okay. These are huge incidences, small numbers of them during a 10-year time span, which has not left my memory, and it shouldn't leave any of yours. And everybody that was once involved has a perfect opportunity to redeem themselves by doing it right. And if they can't do it here in Texas, they can't do it over in Arizona. They got the perfect opportunity to do it in the melting pot. Two cities that are huge melting pots. They got an opportunity to do it right, and to do it right in front of the whole world, just in those two cities alone. Currently, they are dropping the ball. DC National Guard, anyway, the Department of Defense, anyway, everybody in the Pentagon, they are dropping the ball. They suck. They are just worthless. Absolutely worthless. They're proving themselves that time after time, every time a crisis like this comes around. Despite the fact they're claiming they don't have equipment and they don't have any kind of experience. Despite the fact that they've got tons of experience all throughout the nation when natural disasters occur. It affects migrants too. When every hurricane that comes and makes an entire city homeless and the surrounding counties homeless, that's care that needs to be done for them. The task of taking care of them comes into play. The National Guard is what does that. So this BS excuses for the migrants that are being bused, That's just bullcrap. They're as worthless as my Texas governor. They got every shot, every opportunity to redeem themselves from these past scandals, past crimes that went on underneath their noses, past incidences of shame and embarrassment. They got every opportunity to make it right this time. And they're dropping the ball. In the name of patriotism, to top it all off. In the name of loving America. While crying about, well, you got FEMA checks, you got FEMA grants. I knew the money had to be in it. That's the saying that I always go by. It's always about the money. Belief is the tool. You got FEMA grants. You take care of it. And I believe I'm doing this the right ways and for America. Morons, assholes, dumbasses. Absolutely worthless. Worthless. I said what I needed to say. I hope y'all can take into effect that this stuff I'm not making up. Again, this is a CBS News article. You can read it yourself. CBS.com. You can see for it yourself. Pentagon rejects the second request, or rejects the request from the mayors. You can see for it yourself. The excuses go on and on and on. The very first excuse was that it was politicized if they participated. Now they're saying there's no equipment, there's no training, there's no nothing, and it'll interfere with the training that's going on in fall and all this stuff. The excuses go on, and every time they do this, they miss the perfect opportunity to redeem themselves from any scandals and take care of things the right way. They mess it up. They messed it up. They just plain dropped the ball. That's the reason why. And it's not just DC. It's everybody that I just stated. The Department of Defense, the Pentagon as well. They just plain dropped the ball. But the reason for DC is just worthless is because that's the eye-catcher title. Okay? DC National Guard is worthless. That's to draw your attention. And I'm not wrong in saying it. But I do have to make this claim. I have to claim it's not etched in stone. Okay? There is a chance, there is a possibility that I might be proven wrong. Maybe. It's a long shot. Not likely, but, don't say but, however, they might actually be able to get the job done right and do exactly what we need to see out of them in participating with this humanitarian crisis, this problem with the migrants being spread out all over the place to none their final destinations, but being dumped on wherever and all this other stuff. You know, we need to see them do the humanitarian effort no differently than we need to see them do the humanitarian effort when they were rescuing animals out of the Gulf when that pipeline broke, when the offshore drill broke and it leaked so much oil that it polluted almost the entire Gulf area, almost the entire Gulf. You know, the National Guard partook in that also. So that's it right there. I'm coming up to 60 minutes, so I'm going to stop right now. Y'all take care. Y'all take it easy. Take a step back and see for it yourselves. I'm not making any of this up. I'm just the messenger. I'm just relaying the messenger, and I'm saying it all in the name of common sense on common ground, because that's exactly what it is. Y'all take care. This is Chris with Chris's Comments, signing out.